That night, everything seemed normal. I was at home, tired after a long day at work, and, as usual, I ordered food through the app. It was something I did almost every night. Choose a restaurant, confirm the order, and wait. Nothing out of the ordinary. I picked a familiar restaurant, comfort food for a chilly night, and the app showed the estimated delivery time. Everything was working as it should. Minutes passed, and I got involved in something else, temporarily forgetting about the order. Until I received the notification, "Your delivery driver is on the way." I opened the app and saw the driver's photo and name, Gustavo. He looked young, with a friendly expression in the photo. His route was outlined on the map, and everything indicated that he was near the restaurant, getting ready to pick up my order. I kept watching Gustavo's path, following the line that showed his route to my house. It was almost like a habit, a distraction to pass the time while waiting for the food. He picked up the order and started heading in my direction. The route was familiar. I recognized the streets and the path he would take to get here. That's when things started to get strange. Suddenly, the icon on the map stopped moving. Gustavo was parked on a street I didn't know very well, not too far from my house, but far enough to seem out of the way. I thought maybe he had stopped to handle something quickly, maybe a phone call or to check the GPS. I gave him a few minutes before I started to get concerned. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15. Gustavo's icon wasn't moving. I began to feel uneasy, but I tried to rationalize it. Maybe he was having traffic issues, or the GPS was malfunctioning. I decided to wait a little longer, but I couldn't take my eyes off the map. Something wasn't right. Suddenly, I received a message through the app. It was from Gustavo. "I'm nearby, just a few more minutes." Something about the message made me suspicious. The tone seemed off, short, like he was being forced to write it. Besides, I could clearly see that he wasn't moving. It was as if the message was an excuse, a way to get me to stop watching his location. I waited a few more minutes, but the feeling that something was wrong kept growing. The icon was still stuck on the same street, without any sign of movement. I decided to send another message. "Is everything okay? It's taking a bit longer than expected." No response. Nothing. I gave it a few more minutes, trying not to worry, but then I received another message. This one was even stranger. "I'm almost there. Everything is fine." The "everything is fine" part made my blood run cold. No one sends a message like that unless something is, in fact, wrong. I looked at the map again, and Gustavo was still in the same place. Now I knew something was very wrong. He was saying he was arriving, but he wasn't moving. I decided to try something different. I called the number provided by the app for direct contact with the driver. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times, then went to voicemail. My heart started to race. At that moment, I decided to check where Gustavo was stopped. I vaguely knew the area, and the street he was on wasn't exactly on a common route. It was a more isolated road, almost unlit. Curiosity mixed with fear as I grabbed my keys and left the house. I drove for a few minutes until I reached the street where Gustavo's icon was stuck on the app. The street was deserted, with just a few old houses and many empty lots. As I got closer to the spot marked on the map, I started to feel even more nervous. And then I saw it. Gustavo's car was there, parked by the side of the road. The lights were off and the engine was silent. What hit me immediately was the overwhelming silence. There was no sign of movement, no one on the street. I parked a few meters behind without getting out of the car. I looked at the vehicle for a moment, trying to discern if anyone was inside, but I couldn't see anything. The driver's window was slightly open, sending a chill down my spine. Everything felt abandoned. I grabbed my phone and tried calling Gustavo again, but it still went straight to voicemail. What was going on? I gathered my courage and got out of the car. Every step I took toward Gustavo's car made my heart beat faster. As I approached the open window, the cold of the night seemed to intensify. I looked inside the car, and what I saw made my blood run cold. The driver's seat was empty. The car was completely deserted. No sign of Gustavo, no clue where he might have gone. But the most disturbing thing was what I saw on the back seat. My food order, untouched. It was as if Gustavo had vanished into thin air, leaving behind only the car, the order, and an overwhelming silence. Something was terribly wrong, and the feeling of being watched overwhelmed me. I rushed back to my car as quickly as I could, fear growing with every second. I drove home in silence, unsure of what to do. The next day, I called the delivery service, but no one could give me any answers. Gustavo had disappeared, and no one knew where he was. No trace of him was found. The app still showed him as en route, as if he were stuck on that street forever. And to this day, whenever I place an order, I can't help but look at the map, watching for the delivery driver, hoping they arrive, but always with the fear that one day I'll see Gustavo's icon stuck, frozen somewhere, unable to move, because I know somehow he's still out there. Being a food delivery driver never really bothered me. In fact, I enjoyed the feeling of freedom, driving around the city at night, listening to music in the car, and making quick deliveries. Each order was a chance to earn a few extra bucks, and most nights were peaceful. But that night was different. I picked up an order just like any other, a delivery to a neighborhood I didn't usually go to. There was nothing strange about the order. Food from a regular restaurant, placed by an average customer. I got the address and plugged it into the GPS. It was a bit out of the way, a house off my usual routes, but nothing that raised any suspicion. I figured it would be just another quick delivery, and soon enough, I'd be back on my main route. As I drove, the city started to fade behind me, and I entered a more remote area. The streets were empty, and the streetlights were sparse and spaced out, leaving several parts of the road in complete darkness. The GPS kept guiding me, and after a few minutes, I arrived at the designated street. It was a dead-end road, with only a few houses and lots of vegetation around. The house I was looking for was the last one on the street, almost hidden among the trees. No lights were on except for a dim bulb on the porch that flickered from time to time. The place looked abandoned, as if no one had lived there for a long time. The GPS confirmed that this was the right address, so I parked and got out of the car, trying to ignore the growing sense of unease. With the order in hand, I walked toward the front door. Every step felt heavier, and the sound of my feet on the dirt seemed to echo in the absolute silence around me. I looked more closely at the house, and that's when I noticed something strange. The windows were covered with thick, dark curtains, and the feeling that someone was watching me from inside the house was suffocating. When I reached the door, I hesitated for a moment before knocking. The wood was worn, full of deep scratches, as if something had tried to get in or out. I pushed the thought aside and knocked on the door. The sound echoed through the house, but there was no response. I waited a few seconds and knocked again, but the silence remained. I was about to leave the order on the porch and head back to the car when I heard a noise. Something soft, like a whisper, coming from inside the house. I tilted my head, trying to listen more closely. More whispers, but they weren't coming from a specific place. It sounded like they were coming from all around, surrounding the house. My skin began to crawl, and an irrational fear started to take hold of me. I took a step back, ready to leave, when I finally heard the sound of the door unlocking. The door slowly opened, creaking sharply, revealing a tall, thin figure. The man in front of me wore old, faded clothes, and his face was partially hidden by the shadows. He looked at me for a moment before speaking, his voice low and drawn out. "Did you bring what I ordered?" A chill ran down my spine, but I tried to stay calm. "Yes, here's your order." He didn't smile, just slowly reached out to take the package. When he did, I noticed that his hands were thin, skeletal, with long, dirty nails. The feeling that something was very wrong was almost overwhelming. I wanted to get out of there as fast as I could. But then, before I could turn away, he spoke again. "Could you come inside and help me with something? Just for a moment." My heart raced. Everything inside me screamed to refuse, to leave as quickly as possible. But for some reason, maybe fear, maybe the pressure of his strange presence, I hesitated. "No, I need to get back to other deliveries," I replied quickly, already taking steps backward. The man looked at me for a few seconds, and something in his gaze made me freeze. His eyes were deep, almost empty, and it felt like he was watching me in a way I couldn't understand. Then I heard another sound, coming from inside the house. Footsteps. Footsteps that weren't his. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a shadow move in the darkness inside the house. Something was in there, something that shouldn't be. My entire body tensed up, and without a second thought, I turned and started walking back to the car as fast as I could, not looking back. "You can't leave," his voice echoed behind me, but I didn't stop. I reached the car, locking the door as soon as I got inside, my hands shaking. I started the engine and sped away from that street as fast as I could. I didn't look in the rearview mirror. I knew that if I did, I'd see something I didn't want to see. I drove back to the city in silence, the fear still coursing through my veins. I tried to forget what had happened, but the images of that house, the strange man, and the shadow moving inside it wouldn't leave my mind. The next morning, I checked the address on the app again, trying to find some explanation, but the order had disappeared. There was no record of that delivery. It was as if it had never existed. Since that night, I avoid making deliveries to isolated houses. Something about that house, about that man, wasn't normal. And to this day, I wonder what would have happened if I had gone inside. Because something or someone was waiting for me in there, and I know it wasn't the customer. It was an ordinary night, nothing special. I was tired after a long day, and as usual, I decided to order food through the app. Nothing fancy, just something quick so I wouldn't have to cook. I placed the order as always. A burger, fries, and a drink. A simple combo, no complications. The app confirmed the order and showed the delivery driver, a guy with a friendly smile in the photo, who would soon be on his way. Everything seemed normal. I was used to this process. It had become almost automatic. The estimated delivery time was about 30 minutes, so I sat on the couch and kept watching TV while I waited. After a while, I got a notification that the driver was arriving. I picked up my phone to check and saw that he was only a few minutes away. Everything seemed in order, except for an uneasy feeling that started to grow inside me for no apparent reason. A few minutes later, I heard the doorbell ring. I walked to the door and opened it, expecting to see the delivery driver with my food. But what I found was something completely unexpected. The driver was standing there, holding a bag. But it wasn't the usual delivery bag. It was larger, heavier than I imagined. And immediately, I felt that something was wrong. The smell coming from the bag wasn't that of a burger and fries. It was something strange, both sweet and sour at the same time. My mouth went dry. "Good evening. Here's your order," said the delivery driver, with a smile that seemed Forced. I looked at him and then at the bag, confused. I think there's been a mistake, I said, trying to stay calm. This isn't what I ordered. He looked at me directly, his expression unchanged, and repeated, "It's all correct. This is your order." Every instinct I had was screaming at me to close the door and end the conversation, but something kept me standing there. "No, I ordered a burger combo. This isn't my order." The bag he was holding looked increasingly strange, as if something was wrong with its contents, and the smell was getting stronger. He just kept smiling, not blinking. "This is the order you placed." My discomfort grew with every passing second. The atmosphere felt charged, as if the air around me was becoming heavier, harder to breathe. I looked at the bag again, and curiosity, mixed with fear, took hold of me. I opened my mouth to argue again, but he interrupted me. "Please accept it." His words sounded like a command, soft yet firm at the same time. Something about the way he said it made me hesitate, as if I were being controlled. With trembling hands, I took the bag, avoiding eye contact with him. The weight of the bag was unsettling, as if it held something very different from what I had expected. "Thank you and good night," he said, turning away as if nothing strange had happened. I quickly shut the door, locking it behind me. I stood there for a moment, holding the heavy bag, the strange smell filling the room. Something was wrong, and I knew that opening that bag wouldn't bring any good answers, but I couldn't resist. I walked to the kitchen table and placed the bag down. The smell was almost unbearable now, a mix that I couldn't identify. With trembling hands, I opened the bag. What I saw inside made me step back immediately. There wasn't a burger, fries, or anything I had expected. There was raw meat, but not the kind you'd find at a restaurant. It was different, almost rotten, with dark spots, and the sweet and sour smell became even stronger, making me nearly gag. Next to the meat was a piece of paper, stained with blood. Shaking, I picked up the paper and turned it over, revealing a handwritten message. "I know where you live." My heart raced. I dropped the paper immediately, terror taking over. None of this made sense. What was happening? Why would someone bring me something like this? I ran to my phone and tried calling the app's customer service number, but the signal was dead. Not even the messages were working. With every second, the fear grew stronger. Then the house phone rang. That shrill ring echoed through the room, and my panic intensified. I wasn't expecting any calls, and no one knew I was home except for the app. The phone rang again, more insistent. I grabbed the phone with shaking hands and answered, my breath catching. "Hello?" My voice came out weak, almost inaudible. On the other end of the line, I heard heavy breathing. Long, deep, but no one spoke. My entire body trembled, and I knew something terrible was happening. Before I could hang up, the voice came, low, cold, like a whisper. "Did you enjoy the order?" My knees almost gave out. The person knew. They knew what was in the bag, knew where I was. My entire body froze, and I could barely muster a response. I hung up the phone with trembling hands, backing away from it as if it were burning. What was I supposed to do? Call the police? But what would I even say? As I tried to process what had just happened, I heard a sound, a soft tap on the living room window. My heart almost stopped. I looked toward the window, and there, in the dim light outside, I saw the figure of the delivery driver. He was standing there, outside my house, watching me. The smile on his face was the same, but his eyes were locked on me, as if he were waiting for something. I locked all the doors and windows as quickly as I could. I don't know how long I sat on the floor, waiting for him to leave, but the feeling that he was still there watching me never went away. And to this day, Every time I order food, I can't help but wonder if one day he'll come back.